Ain't you tired of that same old thing? There ain't no shame, cause everybody ain't gonna change. Moxie's looking to stop Le Champion. His cover's blown, can't fool us for too long. We need a real world champ, no more cheap shots. Consider Mox the right doctor for the detox. You know when
I'm alive!
Welcome back, All Elite family, to another exciting edition of the All Elite podcast. As always, I'm your host, All Elite Andy, and I'm joined by my co-host, my boy, Big Match AJ. He doesn't have his headphones on, so he doesn't know that we've begun, but we are getting started with another exciting edition of the podcast. AJ, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Recently, my cousin and uncle moved in, so that's what I've been doing mostly these past few days. Just moving stuff in. Might go back down Wednesday, but I don't know because of course, AEW Dynamite.
Yeah, man. So that, as you guys can see, if you've been paying attention to the video version, AJ had to move his hard cam, much like people are talking about being done on WWE Raw and AEW Dynamite lately. So our boy following the trends, maybe a trendsetter himself, who knows? But no, there really isn't a ton of well, there's one major news thing that we have to talk about with the AEW, but there hasn't been a lot to talk about with all the coronavirus stuff going on. It really limited things until the last couple days, but over the last few days, we got a lot of interesting news. The biggest news, obviously, being Blood and Guts being they pushed it back. They've delayed it. We don't know when Blood and Guts will be, and that rubbed people the wrong way in some cases. But this was something I saw coming. You can't have more than 10 people in a place right now. So how do you do a match that involves 11?
Yeah, this is. I mean, it was kind of expected, and they even mentioned that. I think exactly what you said. I think Chris Jericho mentioned that on Twitter. Uh, and really, it kind of makes sense because I don't know. I'm feeling like after this Matt Hardy stuff, I don't mind the build up, especially if you can do something at the Hardy compound or you can do some non-traditional stuff. And honestly, the show wasn't bad. So I don't know if you're gonna do it, just build it up more, make it more right to put on in front of an empty arena if that's what you're gonna do. And yeah, you just kind of got to wait it out, and it sucks. It definitely does suck in a lot of ways that you can't have more than 10 people gathering right now, and who knows if Florida is going to get shut down, and that'll put it like permanently put a cap on AEW for, I guess, as far as we can tell.
Yeah, this almost makes me wonder if they're just trying to position themselves in a place where taping something like Blood and Guts is probably something you don't want to do, but you can tape a couple of weeks leading up to that and hope that things get better in the meantime. And I think that might be where they're going. We've seen a lot of wrestling be taped over the last week. WWE apparently potentially taping WrestleMania. So there's a lot that's being taped and saved for whatever. So you have to imagine AEW sees that. They're very cognizant of what's going on. So it really leads me to believe that that's the case, that they're going to put this match on way down the road, or who even knows, it could get canceled entirely just with the way scheduling and things have been.
Yeah, maybe. And one would assume that they're going to start taping, yeah, because at this point you're running out of options, and with WWE doing it, I think that will be the wake up call that, like, damn, even WWE is going to be taping shows, but we kind of need to do that.
Yeah, it kind of just comes down to, I think, what the government does in general, because if you're paying attention to the news right now, they're talking about maybe things being opened back up in not a normal capacity in a week, but wanting to get the economy moving once again within the next week or so. That's what the president is saying. There are a lot of other people within the government and the media saying that this likely won't happen, but if AEW or even WWE catches on to this thought that, hey, this isn't going to last as long as it did, maybe we'll see things get back to normal a lot sooner than we had initially thought.
That would be interesting. Again, it's hard to say because everything is so topsy-turvy right now. I mean, I was just going out today, and 3 of the stores I tried to go to were closed. It's been insane. So it's hard to say, man. Like, even with the president saying that, it's hard to believe that everybody would just say, okay, we're going to reopen with no real further advancement in this.
Yeah, and I'm 100% with you. This isn't a super political podcast, so we're not going to dive too deep into what we feel, I think, but I do think that it's just worth noting for sure, especially within the realm of professional wrestling, the one source of entertainment, or that community, is one of the only ones that has remained throughout all of this. So if things sort of get back to business as usual in the way that the president is implying within the next week, then we've, at the very least, we'll see episodes of Dynamite very much like the one last week, which is not a bad thing. Like, that's a good thing. That's a positive. So that's great. On the subject of scheduling, they don't seem to think that this will be over in a week, which is good. They should be thinking long-term, not short-sighted as they kind of were initially. Now it seems that they have a long-term plan. They have canceled shows all the way out till the middle of May. Well, not canceled them, but rescheduled them, planning to hold Dynamite in some capacity live. But, yeah, they've canceled Philly, they've canceled Houston, New Orleans, and Albuquerque. So they've gone all the way out till May 12th in terms of canceling their events. That leaves 1 or 2 before the next pay-per-view. So they're very much realizing that at the very least they will have to do these shows in some capacity, not how they're being done now, obviously. But it is a little weird still because, you know, like, who knows where things are going to go. They're saying that it's going to be live. Like, that's sort of the implication they gave via the tweet was this isn't happening in Albuquerque, but it will be live on TNT still on the 22nd, which I mean, it's a really funny term, live, especially within sports entertainment, but that leads me to believe that they're not going to tape.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. And I don't know, man. I just wish they would tape because we're on the verge of like you said, who knows, maybe everything's going to be fine in a week, but a lot of places are shutting down. And so you never know. But I guess if they really are that confident about going live, then good on them. The cancellations, the ones that are so far down the line, kind of surprise me because then you're not really looking on that flip side either. Because specifically Albuquerque, because I feel like who knows what's going to be happening by that point, and you were about to start going out west more. So that's surprising that they canceled it so late in the game or so early in the game. But it's a good call probably.
I think it's a good call if for no other reason than it helps the fans, man. You don't want to be a fan in Albuquerque sort of checking every week like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I should buy tickets. I don't know what I should do. I mean, fans still have that speculation about the pay-per-view at this point. Will I be able to go? Will things still be normal? What will happen? Will it be changed where it's at? So, and I get totally keeping the pay-per-view as it is. You don't want to make a change that far out. But the May 12th thing, I think that it's actually a comfortable place to be setting yourself. That, and in a couple weeks, you can reassess and sort of see where you're at. And hopefully you don't have to do something about the pay-per-view because, and that's something that's going to be totally out of their hands anyway. That venue is literally shut down until like a week before the pay-per-view. So that's one where they're going to have to wait and see. And who knows, maybe they'll make a call similar to this one and saying, we've got to make a decision now. We can't have the fans waiting and hoping, you know?
Yeah, I hear you.
So in terms of that's the one thing where I can totally get behind, like, you know, and it's akin to Phil. That's something I think about, how Phil didn't really find out until probably 4 days before the show actually was. And I was quite surprised, honestly, in the way that Phil reacted, the way he wasn't as upset about it. And you can't be mad at the company, but knowing Phil, he can get mad over anything.
Yeah.
But so just that he was very much understanding and stuff. Like, fans will be understanding, but they will be more understanding if they have a much larger heads up, I think. So
yeah, definitely.
And so it's funny because now you see them almost promoting. One of the shows I saw them promoting today was literally in December. Like, that's a show where they're comfortable with promoting what the venue is, being New Orleans, and that's a very, like, so it's funny, man. It's crazy how different things are in the world of professional wrestling, especially for AEW.
It definitely is, man. It's wild, and AEW being a startup, I think that's what's scariest about it. If it was like a year or two down the line, then maybe things would be a lot better. You have more to show, you have more to replay. But damn, so early on in the game for this to happen, this is the worst time it could.
Yeah, 100%. Like you said, the worst time. You hear about small business and so much thrown around in the news right now that are suffering. AEW is not a small business. They're backed by a billionaire, but they are a brand new business in a very difficult situation as it was. being a wrestling company and now facing these challenges, it's very much an uphill battle. Luckily, they have a very smart team of guys who are doing things that are smart. Like last week's Dynamite was great. The one thing I will say about it though is at one point last week, because it was such a fun show and I enjoyed it so much, I was like, this is perfect almost. Like it was almost, I was thinking to myself, is this better than if there were fans? And I almost had myself wrapped up in it was just because like it was better with no fans because of everything that had happened. But then I thought about it the next day and I'm like, imagine if the fans were there for all the cool shit that happened. So it's unfortunate, but at least they're doing what they can with it and making an entertaining product that for the moment can make you forget or feel like, hey, this is better than that. But then once you get time to think about it, you kind of come around to realize like, man, imagine that pop, imagine this, imagine that.
Yeah.
So, but they've done a phenomenal job.
Get wrapped up in your own head with that. Like I kept thinking about, man, if Matt, and because he even mentioned it, Matt Hardy on Chris Jericho's podcast, if the fans had been there for that and they did the shot that they wanted to do, that would have been so damn sweet.
Yeah, and I mean at that point they would have been in Rochester. It would have been a whole different vibe to it. Like, so there's just so much more to what could have been, but they still did a phenomenal job and knocked it out of the park. And that's where I hope that they do tape. They tape these shows because they had to have seen the reaction they got from fans who were disappointed, thinking we might not get an episode this week. Luckily, it looks like we are, which is and it already looks like a fun episode. They did tape for Dark. They taped a heavy episode of Dark. It almost made me think that maybe they were thinking we might not be able to do Dynamite next week, so if not, we have a 2-hour episode of Dark to air in place of it.
Yeah, I kind of had the same thought as you did. That's where my head was at. You know, maybe play whatever you have of Dark and replay a couple of big name matches, and then you have a show. And definitely possible that they're even, you know, banking some of these Dark matches to air later than they normally would. But
No,
I'm not
man.
sure if they want to do it in congruence.
They've announced that tomorrow's episode of Dark is essentially like a 2-hour show. It's going to start at the regular time, but we're getting all of those matches taped last week, which I'm super excited about. I was under the idea that maybe they were just going to do 2 episodes of Dark off of that one taping, so that way they don't have to do as much tomorrow. Maybe set them up to tape an episode of Dynamite, or on Wednesday. But no, this is just. It's very interesting that we have that to look forward to as fans too. Like, I'm genuinely excited for Dark.
Yeah, me too. Especially because I don't know anything about it really, because I've totally avoided spoilers because I was like, you know, there's not too much wrestling around these days, so you want to get what you can. And so I don't even know if there are spoilers for it, but it's definitely going to be an exciting show. We should watch that together if you're free.
Oh, absolutely, man. I plan to make time to watch that. And the thing about it is that like the card for it's good. You're talking about spoilers. I've managed to avoid spoilers, but they did put out like a brief match card video thing on social media over the last day or so, and then they announced like a full listing, and it's a good, like, interesting listing because what they did with this episode of Dark, and I didn't realize it at first when I had seen some of the matches earlier in the week. What they did is they brought in a lot of independent talent who are going to be out of work and got them a payday. And it's we'll go through the Dark card here in a minute, but you'll see like they did a great job of that, and that's something you have to give them an immense amount of credit for to even think of that. So that's something I'm really excited to talk about. Let's just jump into it actually. There's not a whole lot of other news to talk about, so let's talk about this week's episode of Dark, which we have to look forward to tomorrow. First match announced, we have Jake Hager taking on Joe Alonzo. The one downfall to this card is the fact that with it being a lot of local or independent talent, you have an idea of who's probably going to win.
Yeah, that's true.
But the job that they did with Abaddon 2 weeks ago, or when in Denver with Abaddon, and their ability to get her over on social media, even in a loss, because she was so different and it was something else for people to see. I think that's why this episode of Dark is so exciting. We might not see any upset victories, but we're gonna see some different wrestlers doing different things that is exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, it is a bit of a downside that you kind of have an idea of who's going to win. But who knows? You don't want to do that too many times, right? And if it's going to be filled with that, we may get an upset. I don't know, depending on who's there, if it's a Brandon Cutler or something.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know the
have.
card, so
I definitely think there's a chance we could see an upset. This one doesn't seem like it. I'm not super familiar with Joe Alonzo, really. I'm obviously familiar
no,
with
me
Hager.
neither.
And Hager just being on this card is what makes me lean into the thought that this could have been for Dynamite, just because you
Yeah,
want a bigger star on this card, and he's definitely one of the bigger talents in AEW, and he hasn't had a lot of
absolutely.
matches.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, that would definitely be a Dynamite thing to do.
So, but it does draw people in to watch Dark, and in the same this, I'll probably have this take on every Jake Hager match. I want him to go in, dominate, win, walk out,
Yep, same
and I
here.
and I
I'm
hope
with
this
you.
and I hope this Joe Alonzo dude's pretty big too. Like that, it just makes Hager look that much better. So I'm interested in that one for sure. Next up, we have a match that I know Phil will be interested in. We have Colt Cabana taking on Brandon Cutler. Phil, what are your thoughts?
Oh my god.
Oh, I'm sure Phil will love it. That's gonna be his 5 out of 5 favorite dark match ever.
Oh, let's do our Dark recap, and the number one reason why you have to watch.
Fucking kidding me?
But no, I mean, this one's interesting. Colt Cabana promising to get on Dark or any of Kenny Omega's shows on that one episode of Being the Elite. So he shows up here and a match for Cutler. So that's good.
Yeah, definitely. And Brandon Cutler honestly has been kind of showing up in the ring lately. He's been doing very, very well, and so it's going to be fun to see him wrestle Colt Cabana.
Watching the progression of Brandon Cutler has been very interesting. It's taken a little while for him to grow on me and really become someone that I'm
Yeah.
willing to give that chance to. But over the last couple weeks, especially when I do tune into Dark, he's impressed me, and he does have something else about him. You could tell that he's not someone they're maybe grooming to be a top star, but he's also not just meant to be this guy who loses all the time.
Yeah, totally agreed. He shows so much potential, and ever since he's kind of wiped off the ring rust from being gone for so long, I feel like it's just been getting exponentially better and better.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, he's been getting better and better for sure. And then after that, we have QT Marshall and Dustin Rhodes taking on John Cruz and Matt Sells. I'm super unfamiliar with these guys, but in the
Yeah, me
in the
too.
match graphic, one of them looks really cool. So I'm in.
That's all it takes.
It-
Yeah, man, I don't know anything about these guys, so I can't comment too much. I can comment on I still don't know how I feel about QT Marshall and Dustin Rhodes as a tag team. I mean, I get it; it's something for them to do, but I feel like it kind of takes away from Dustin, who gets kind of a big crowd pop, and I don't think you're really rubbing off on QT Marshall because he's kind of just like I feel like dragging it down a little bit because he doesn't have anything really going for him. All he's done is have like tag matches with Cody and lose. I don't know, and he's not particularly great or anything. I know he can do moves, but it's just I I don't like this tag team, man.
Yeah, I'm just not a huge fan of QT Marshall in general. A name like that, is it supposed to turn you off in the beginning? And it, like literally just his name and then his look and then everything that we've been built up with him. Because if you've been riding with AEW from day one, you've seen him in all the Road 2 videos and all these. All he's been presented as nothing but a joke from day one of AEW. So it's
Yeah.
really hard to get behind him and really hard to get behind this idea of Dustin elevating him because in a lot of ways Dustin was doing really well for himself. I don't feel like he has that ability though to take someone like QT Marshall to the next level because
No, I don't either.
QT almost does the stuff you would expect from an older wrestler like Dustin in the terms of mistakes and things like that. So when
Yeah.
Dustin goes in there and he's hitting like Canadian pile drivers or whatever and doing all this crazy shit and looking like $1,000,000 at his age,
Mhm.
and then he's being dragged down by this guy who's like 30 years old, 40, 35 years old. It's like, damn, dude, Dustin would just be better off by himself. So
Yeah, that's the feeling I get.
so who knows if it leads to something down the line where Marshall turns on Dustin. That's the only thing I could anticipate being somehow set up here. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
but hey, who knows? Maybe we get an upset from John Cruz and Matt Sells, but I'm not not betting on that one.
Yeah, me neither.
This next match is the one where I want to see an upset. We have Kip Sabian taking on Suge D. This is Sugar Dunkerton, AJ. I didn't know
Oh
this.
shoot.
Yep, earlier today I was like, because I had seen a picture. Again, I'm a mark, so all I got to do is see a picture of someone. If they look cool, I'm like, fuck yeah. So I seen Suge D, and I was like, I want to see him in the ring. And then someone commented on it on Twitter and was like, yeah, Sugar Dunkerton's awesome. And I was like, oh, I know exactly who that is. Like, this is cool as fuck. So great opportunity there. I'd love to see an upset here.
That would be great. I would love to see more Sugar Dunkerton in any company. He's awesome.
He's fun.
I'm
He's a
very
great
excited for
talent.
this match.
Yeah, dude.
When you said Suge D, I had the same reaction of you. I was like, I don't know who that is, but Sugar Dunkerton, yeah.
Yep. And so that's exciting. And it's almost a draw to bring me into watching Dark just for him.
Yeah.
And they should do more of this even after the coronavirus has passed and they're actually able to just run shows. Bring in some well-known indie guys. Don't do what WWE does where it's the typical, like, oh, local dude, it doesn't matter how good he is, just pay him $500 or $100, work your one match and go. Fly in some people from PWG or whatever and be like, listen, this is your opportunity. If you can get over with this crowd in the next week or so, then boom, you could stick on. Something like that, where you then can introduce new faces and give these guys an opportunity. Sugar Dunkerton is someone I could see. Social media will be talking about Suge D after this.
Yeah, definitely. I would hope so.
Even with no crowd, like whatever small crowd they have, I think they will do a good job at. And that's the beauty here for a lot of these guys who aren't well known, is if they're known enough within the AEW locker room, they should get a reaction from the guys who are out there.
Yeah, definitely, because it's basically like those shows where the boys are only watching. You gotta pop for Sugar Dunkerton and Kip Sabian, right? Or I would, anyways.
Yeah, for sure. And who knows? Maybe we'll get some more of the Colt Cabana Kip Sabian feud continuation there.
I didn't think about that.
Then we have someone else who feuded with Kip Sabian, Joey Janela, in a tag team match. He'll be teaming with Sonny Kiss to take on Corey Hollis and Mike Reed. So who knows if this means that Sonny Kiss is now going to join the evil Oreo or the Death Oreo of. Did you see that on social media? Joey Janela is talking about his new spooky stable with the private party. They're called the Death Oreo.
No, I did not see that, but that's great.
So hopefully we bring Sonny Kiss in on the Death Oreo. But no, this is an interesting match because I love Joey, but being that he's teamed with Sonny, I honestly don't know what Sonny's record is. It's probably a little bit better than I'm thinking, but this could be an upset. I don't know a lot about Corey Hollis and Mike Reed, but you never know.
Yeah, I guess you never know, but I kind of don't want Joey Janela to take a loss to the indie guys.
He would be the one, though, to not only be like to take the loss, but to offer to take the loss to help try and elevate these guys. So regardless,
you're absolutely right about that.
Regardless, I'm excited for this one. I'm excited to see Joey in this capacity, and I think he fits in well with like these type of wrestlers, like Sonny Kiss and Joey, and like yeah, I don't know. It's and even Jungle Boy and like the younger crowd is what I guess I'm trying to say is Joey fits into the much more younger scene of wrestlers where it's very abstract and different. The Jungle Boys, the Marcos, the Sonnies, the Effies, even the Jimmy Lloyds, like all of these wrestlers that Joey associates with. So him teaming with Sonny just feels like this is going to be a fun pairing. And
yeah, actually, it kind of is.
So I hope to see something good. Well, and who knows? I mean, it's a very random pairing, but the fact that they're going up against an indie team almost makes me think like this is either a chance where they're trying to really show us this new team that they want to bring on, or Joey and Sonny might be a new team.
Yeah, that's possible. I definitely did like Private Party and Joey Janela together. I'll say that much.
I'm telling you, the Death Oreo plus Sonny Kiss, it's a group that needs to be done. Those four just running around as party idiots would be great.
Yeah, it kind of would.
And then in a match I assume will be the main event just because SCU is in it. We have SCU taking on Shawn Spears and Robert Anthony. I'm not super familiar with Robert Anthony, but I'm pretty sure he's one of the guys on social media who was doing that whole gimmick with Shawn Spears. So that could have been
for Spears. Yeah.
So it could have been them just planting this whole situation, or maybe he did a really good job and impressed them, and they figured better now than never, because who knows when they'll get a chance to bring him in. So.
That's very interesting. I didn't consider that. I didn't consider that they would bring in a guy like that who did the Twitter. That's going to be kind of funny. And it would also be especially interesting if they won, because then you actually have a partner for Spears if the guy's good.
Yeah, and that could be an interesting story. Maybe maybe Robert Anthony becomes Spears' partner and he's really, really good. And that sort of rubs Spears the wrong way because he was losing so much before with all these other guys. And maybe it's Robert Anthony who's good. And you create this dynamic with Tully where Tully's more inclined to help Robert, even though
Oh, that
Spears
would be
brought him
super
in.
good. That would be dope.
Like, yeah, it's a very interesting type of story and something a little bit different within wrestling that I think would be cool and fun. And who knows, maybe that's the angle they're going. They would definitely first have to pick up that victory over SCU, though.
Yeah, for sure. Again, that would be a big win.
Oh, a huge win. The first tag team champions, the former tag team champions. So a huge win it would be, and it would definitely elevate that story a little bit. So I'm excited for this one. This card looks great. It looks like it's going to be a fun time to sit down and watch some wrestling, and probably will feel very reminiscent to last week's show because it was taped last week, and the vibe worked for that. So
yeah, it definitely did. Surprisingly well, because the thing I noticed with WWE is they didn't learn from any of their no crowd shows. They kept doing the same angles and camera angles and shooting to the crowd and stuff, and it all looked terrible. And they just keep doing it. AEW, I feel like if something is off or if they can do something better in this situation, they absolutely will.
yeah, it quite literally took Raw until this week to do something different just off of seeing what AEW did and realizing that the hard cam should probably change positions just because of how goofy shit looked, and it kind of helped Raw in a little way. So it's funny to see how AEW can set that tone for them, but AEW isn't, or WWE isn't the only one borrowing things. On this week's episode of Dynamite that we have coming up, we have Cody joining the commentary team, much akin to Triple H joining the NXT commentary team. So it's a smart. What I'm trying to say is these companies shouldn't be chastised for borrowing each other's ideas in a time of
They shouldn't at all.
shitty times. They should be like, okay, good. I'm glad you guys are doing what's best for our product and making us as fans entertained no matter what. So in that aspect, I'm super excited to hear Cody on commentary. Like, that's gonna be fun.
And not only is Cody on commentary going to be fun, I would say this is where AEW is in favor doing this over NXT because Cody's actively involved in angles, in multiple angles right now in AEW. So him being on commentary doesn't only add fun, but it adds tension to the storyline season.
And it just adds a different voice to the sound of what's going on. That's where MJF helped a lot last week. He wasn't necessarily on commentary, but you heard his voice all night long, and it helped change things. So I assume we're going to do the same thing here. And I honestly think that they're going to do things different than they did last week in terms of the amount of people seated at ringside, if anyone is at ringside, Because I think that it worked, and it was really entertaining, and it was good, but I also think that they got enough feedback pointing out where it would be technically wrong in this, what's going on with the coronavirus, that I think they'll change things. I think just because of how they changed Blood and Guts, I think that tells me they might change more than just Blood and Guts.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Because they were very receptive. They've been receptive since the get-go to what the fans think and what's the best thing to do and how is the best way to do it. And so I definitely think you're right on with that AEW is going to adapt to this situation more and more as they learn how to.
And it's tough because it could likely produce a worse product than we got last week, because what did help was that many people being in the crowd and being able to make noise for what was going on and change things. And maybe they will have a couple, but it's still like the way that they've adapted with all their other matches, it just makes me feel like there's a chance we'll see some type of change here on this week's episode. We'll have to wait and see exactly. Obviously, once we tune in, we'll know for sure. And it's also, and like, how would you tell that story again? It made a lot of sense the way they presented it last week, but then is it just they have the story of why no fans are there because Jericho made it that way, but you don't necessarily have the story of why the wrestlers continue to then take the seats in the crowd. It's not a hard story to tell, and you also don't really have to tell a story for it anyway. But just there's so much surrounding them having extra people involved who don't need to be there.
I hear you, but I also did like the crowd noise aspect of it. I mean, it wasn't a big noise, but it was more than just complete silence. So on the other side, I'm not sure. I'm really not sure what I want there.
Yeah, and if nothing else, Just hopefully there's not as much older talent there or being involved. And
Yeah,
it,
I
it,
agree with that wholeheartedly.
it leads me to believe that they're again taking note of this because Cody says he's going to be doing commentary with Tony Schiavone. That makes me. He didn't say Jim Ross, didn't mention Jim Ross at all. Makes me believe Jim Ross probably won't be there. Hopefully
Yeah.
Jim Ross is not sick. Hopefully this is just them learning from last week and now taking another precaution. But still,
Yeah, because I mean, Jim Ross should not be traveling that much. It's not the shows, it's the traveling that would really be scary.
yeah, and the fact that it obviously coronavirus affects people of Jim Ross's age and people
Yeah.
who so him and Jake Roberts and Tully Blanchard, those three especially just don't necessarily, and a lot of the agents in the back probably. It'd probably be a little bit hard, but those, and the thing about it is if you're just an agent, you can technically work from home. Like
Yeah, you can do that.
I would imagine. I'm not an agent. I've never agented a match, but you would have to
No, but I hear
imagine
what you mean.
you could Skype in, FaceTime in, hey, this is what we're gonna do, this is what'll look the best, yada yada yada. So and maybe that's already what they're doing, but just in that respect, and again the way Cody announced it, it makes me believe that they've learned a lot from last week and they're gonna do things a little bit different and probably still really good.
Yeah, I believe so. I honestly believe AEW will keep delivering a solid product even throughout this. And I'm sure there will be episodes that wane in how good they are, but because obviously not every episode is going to have Matt Hardy and Brody Lee debuting. But I think they can honestly present a good product.
Yeah, and we also have the fact of just like, well, Cody's going to do commentary, but he also apparently is scheduled for a match on the card. So how do they plan on sequencing that? Will there also be someone else on commentary? Well, obviously Excalibur. So I don't know why Cody just tagged Shivani. But yeah, I mean, if Excalibur's not there, I'm a little bit nervous. So I mean, I get that people can change over the week and be like, hey, I don't want to go anymore. I don't want to continue to risk it. But the fact that someone like Excalibur was there last week and he wouldn't be there this week would make me feel like he might have been experiencing some symptoms, and that's enough to cause for concern in terms of the people that he was working with last week. So that's the shitty part about the coronavirus is we almost have to be worried about some of the most like nitpicky of shit, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And I would hope that Excalibur is healthy and okay, but you're right, it is a cause to raise some eyebrows, or maybe he just is being safe and he doesn't want to go in right now. Um,
Or
but
maybe he's gonna be on the show and Cody just didn't tag him. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, of course.
so there's always
Very
the
possible.
possibility for that, but it's just definitely different, definitely a little bit of a weird situation going on there. And it's also weird that we didn't just see the cancellation of the blood and guts match. If I mean I don't know for sure, but it looks like they've kind of just canceled the whole card they had planned for that one, which makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense considering for some reason they wanted to do a lumberjack match. I get you that would create noise, but that would then involve way too many people. So that was a little bit of a weird thing, but no, this is
Yeah, definitely.
but they have a good well, and so they have stopped referencing all of those matches for that card. I would like to see the street fight that they were talking about doing the tag team one.
Yeah, I agree with that. They definitely shouldn't nix that. That was a good idea to do a street fight with those two. Because one, this is actually turning into an interesting feud. Two, this is a good way to get around the coronavirus, and three, it would just be a fun ass match.
Yeah, for sure, and would just add an interesting dynamic. And with those four, you know that or six even, you can do so many. Well, Pac wouldn't be there, so five at the very least. With those five, you can do so many different things and so many more interesting things. So I don't know. Like I said, they haven't really announced or continued to talk about any of those matches that have been announced. Instead, as I previously alluded to, we have Cody announced to take on Jimmy Havoc. This is an interesting one because I assume it'll get a decent amount of time. Jimmy Havoc really needs to shine in some way, so this is where it's going to happen if it's going to happen, and it's not going to happen. But
No, it's not going to happen. But it should be a fine match. It's kind of an awkward match. Not awkward, just a little random that it's happening. All because Jimmy Havoc really hasn't been doing much. I mean, he had that feud with Dr. Luther, but outside of that, he hasn't really even been on TV. So it's kind of surprising that they're hedging this no crowd show on Jimmy Havoc. That seems like an interesting choice to me.
It's definitely a good opportunity to elevate Jimmy with Cody, and I'm not even saying that Jimmy would have to win to do that. Just put on one of those matches where Cody does something, and he did that with Darby, and I essentially had the same feeling going into his match with Darby, where I was like, these two don't necessarily mesh in the way I would expect them to, but I think this could work. And what I also could see is maybe Jimmy aligning himself with Archer, and Archer
Oh
making
yeah, that's
himself
true.
involved in this, attacking Cody. I could also very well see the Dark Order getting involved in it. I don't necessarily know why I think this, just because Jimmy I think was playing into some stuff on social media with Brody and all that maybe they get involved and kill Cody. I know Cody has a lot going on, but they love to start extra feuds and storylines for Cody. So I'm
Yeah, they do.
I'm more inclined to think it might be the Archer thing. If not anything, maybe Archer just kills them both after the match.
Hmm. Yeah, that would be the best thing to do with Archer at this point is just have him continue to be a Haas monster who just runs in and demolishes people.
Or maybe even like Jimmy's in the ring waiting for Cody to come out, and Archer just destroys Jimmy before Cody can even get there or
That would be
something.
sweet.
And because Jimmy sort of fits that aesthetic of guys that had their shit kicked in by Archer last week in the backyard. So
Yeah, they really does. It really has the same exact backyard thug guy vibe.
yeah, so I mean, I don't know entirely. I just think Archer will probably get involved in this somehow. But yeah, it's an opportunity for Jimmy. And as someone, I love Cody matches and singles matches from Cody especially. He does a really good job at sometimes elevating the people he's wrestling. And yeah, I think when it's with people who are seasoned in the ring and have wrestled for 7, 10, 15 years, it's a good match. And I think that's what we'll get here with Jimmy.
Yeah, I don't expect it to be a bad match. I was just a little surprised by the choice of match.
For sure. This next match, I was very surprised about, mostly because you and I were just discussing if Kenny Omega was even still the Omega champion for AAA. We thought he had lost it to Phoenix at some point in the last year. Boy, were we wrong. He's actually going to be defending the AAA Mega Campeon Championship against Sammy Guevara. And who knows? Maybe we see an awesome, awesome upset for Sammy G here.
That would be amazing if Sammy G won the AAA Mega Championship. That'd be some shit. But I expect they're going to want to keep it on Kenny because I don't know if Sammy G has a working relationship with AAA like Kenny Omega seems to.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
he had wrestled before in AAA. He was the cruiserweight
oh, okay.
champion for AAA when he joined AEW. So he
Oh, I
definitely has
see.
that relationship there. That's what leads me to believe there's a chance. Anytime it's Kenny versus one of those AAA guys, even when he faced Jack Evans, I was like maybe. So
Yeah. You're right. I didn't know that. So that's pretty cool. Sammy G is great. I love that Jim Ross is so over on Sammy G that he calls him a young Eddie Guerrero because I only say that because I've been watching like 1996 WCW and I'm like I kind of see it like I kind of because it's like just Eddie doing his thing and it's like I kind of see that Jim. I get where you're coming from. I love Sammy G. If he got elevated as a champion of any kind, I'd love that.
yeah, he definitely like for us as fans who maybe came into the Eddie Guerrero era when he was in WWE and sort of the Latino heat and thing, you might not super understand what he's saying. But if you like Jim Ross was following Eddie from way back when, so
Yeah.
you can easily see the relationship between a very young Eddie and Sammy and just like the ways they kind of carry themselves and just the talent. The talent is there
Yeah.
and it's undeniable. And the cockiness probably too. So in all of that said, I'm very excited for this one. I hope this goes on last. I hope they get so much time. And I expect a lot of outside interference just because of the inner circle versus the elite thing
Hmm.
that's going on here. But that's why I also think Sammy could win. I could very much see both teams sort of getting involved. Hangman accidentally dropping Omega. Sammy gets the title. Um, it's what makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, I agree totally.
Hangman screws Omega out of his title, and then maybe Omega decides to screw Hangman out of the titles that those two have. Uh,
Oh, I don't know if Kenny would want to throw any kind of match, but I hear what you're saying with the Hangman thing interfering because that just fits so perfectly with him being the odd man out during this whole entire blood and guts rivalry. Uh, it's kind of interesting how many variables there are here because it really I didn't think about it that way, but it really could mean that you elevate Sammy by giving him this championship. And previously, correct me if I'm wrong, they didn't want to mention the Mega Championship on Dynamite. They did on Dark, but they didn't want to do it on Dynamite. And same with the NJPW titles for the same reasons, I guess. But they now that they're actually actively promoting it on Dynamite, if Sammy G did win it, I would want to see him wearing it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. And that's where almost I want to see him win, because I don't necessarily think Kenny would look right holding 2 titles right now. It would make everything really off. But if you give it to Sammy after promoting it in this way, you can have Sammy wear it, make it at least a focal point in the downtime that we're in right now, and give us something for television, because you don't want to see Mox defend right now. You could see a women's title match. That would be fine. Tag team title match we don't want to see right now either. These are things that if we're not doing blood and guts right now, we need to push them off as far as humanly possible. So by introducing the Mega Championship and even maybe treating it like a TV title would be a really smart idea, I think, just to utilize something, kind of help elevate AAA in a way. And also, again, I think it would super elevate Sammy.
Definitely.
So, and the thing about this one is they could go so many ways in terms of if they just win a straight 30-minute match with no outside interference, they could potentially put on like a 5-star match very easily. The thing that I will say, though, when Sammy gets these big matches, he gets in his head. He makes a lot more mistakes than when he's just in a very simple regular match, which at this point he should just play that up into his gimmick, because it would make more, like, it's almost so evident in the fact like when he fought Cody in a singles match, he made a lot of mistakes. Granted, it was the first ever episode of Dynamite, so it's hard to hold that against him, and Cody thought it was a great match, and it wasn't a bad match. It was just, you see Sammy make mistakes when he is in this next level of a match for him. You see him almost get too giddy, moving too fast, going to the next thing too much. And in a match with Kenny controls the match, so I don't really expect that to happen. This could be so fun, though. Like, and this is one that I just would love to see them get the opportunity to do just a match.
Yeah, no, same here. Like you said, this could potentially be 5 stars if given enough time.
Yeah, and that's a credit to Sammy, too, not just Kenny. Like, Kenny can have great matches with anybody, but it's almost like bottom of the barrel, this could be 3.5. Like, unless they do some really gimmicky shit. Like, this could be... So these two can obviously have a great match, especially putting them together. So this is a really smart one, and one I assume will main event the show. It makes sense. It's a good way to continue the Elite versus the Inner Circle feud.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, it would take a lot of like gimmicky stuff, way too many run-ins, or just ruining the match, however you want to ruin it, to make this any less than 3.5.
Yeah, so I'm excited here, and again, just another shot for Sammy to really get elevated to that next level, and that's what I like, that what they're doing right now. Like, it's not the best time, but we are getting a lot of viewers, so let's go ahead and elevate as many people as we can right now.
Yeah, they got, 900,000 around there? We didn't really talk about that.
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about it right now. The ratings came in after last week's show. They did a phenomenal job. We saw a 200,000 increase for Dynamite, essentially returning to the numbers they had the previous week right after the pay-per-view. So chilling at 900,000 right now and putting on a fucking awesome show that was essentially universally liked. There wasn't a whole lot you could complain about, unless you're Ryan Satin complaining about the people. Or me. I'm not going to bury him. I was right there saying the same type of stuff. But outside of that, there wasn't a whole lot to complain about.
If this was in front of a live crowd, I wouldn't have been surprised if it cracked 1 million.
Yeah, and
honestly.
Well, that was something you and I had also discussed for a while, and I felt it this week. Like, they were building up to the highest rating they could have ever gotten. Yeah. And so it's unfortunate things played out the way they did, but I don't blame them for rescheduling shit just because of that fact. Like, they were well on their way to doing the best rating they have ever done.
Mm-hmm. And a 200,000 increase, though I don't know how they lost the 200,000 to begin with, but it's phenomenal. It's a great thing. Sorry. But I don't know how to put into words how crazy that is at this time, especially with the coronavirus going on, that they gained 200,000 in a week.
Yeah, absolutely. And they just did a great job with it. And it's funny, dude. We almost forget with how great last week's episode was, how much we were kind of down on AEW 2 weeks ago on that show where they did only do 700,000, and the week before in Denver where they did an even kind of more of a lackluster show, if you ask me. And they did a good number that week, but then it dropped off the next week. I wasn't too surprised about that. But then we have this great show last week. All these people saw it. They're gonna know. Even more people are gonna know this week. I wouldn't be surprised to see it flip another 200,000 this week.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. It's been, if they keep on this upward trend, and especially coming after a show like that where you're promoting Chris Jericho and Matt Hardy having a confrontation, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, well, you have a singles match for Cody, a singles match for Kenny, and like you just said, that confrontation between Matt and Jericho. And the thing that I read about it very clearly says meet face to face. Doesn't say in the ring, doesn't say at the venue, doesn't say a match, doesn't say anything. They're going to the Hardy compound, brother. I guarantee.
They better.
Guarantee it. It makes so much sense.
They absolutely should.
So, I mean, that's a good way to meet face to face. Maybe Jericho tries to convince Matt not to team with these guys. Maybe, like, there's a lot that you could do here still and tell an interesting story and almost make it better to have pushed out Blood and Guts because you get to tell more.
Yeah, you definitely do. And seeing these two veterans, I think it's fair to call them that, have any kind of promo, especially if it's at the Hardy compound, would be amazing. And this story could be amazing because you have basically both teams having an in-ring veteran with them. And I don't know what you can do with that, but I'm sure that you can do something with it.
And these two are creative geniuses, man. And you can't convince me that these two didn't do that interview for Jericho's podcast, and neither one of them thought we have to do a vignette or a video or something for Dynamite this week. And so I'm very confident that it's not just going to be an in-ring segment. I'm very excited for that fact as well, because it could be like there was a report that came out this week, or an interview that Matt did, where he was talking about what he wanted to do in his time in WWE, and he had this broken block idea where it was 15 minutes of just his style of storytelling in the broken universe. And if they do that now on Dynamite with how everything is already fucked, it's the perfect time to do it. We've been saying it for weeks. I hope this is the beginning of that, and this would be beautiful. So I'm very, very much hoping, and will be marking like a little kid the second that video starts.
Definitely the same. I'm right there with you. If it's anything with the Hardy compound in the broken universe, I am all in.
Absolutely. And just Jericho and Matt, dude, you like, these two came up in an era full of talented wrestlers, full of just so much going on, so many charismatic athletes. And yet they're still around because they've been able to adapt and evolve their characters and
reinvent themselves,
and elevate themselves along the way, doing it the whole time. Like so they've both made themselves into bigger stars than they were ever made by the machine, because they were able to do different things and try different things. And so it's cool that they're now going to get an opportunity to interact and tell that story between the two of them, because it's not a story that makes a ton of sense on paper, because they haven't interacted a lot over time. Like, even in the history of WWE, they probably had quite a few tag team matches where the Hardy Boys or Matt and someone against Jericho and Benoit or whoever. But they haven't had a huge storyline, a huge history together. So
no, they haven't. You're right. You're absolutely right. And this is going to be amazing. This is going to be so much money. That's all I can see is this is going to print money. Jericho and Matt Hardy at an angle, like you said, two of the biggest creative geniuses. And it's just going to be great.
Yeah, so I really hope that's where they're going. I hope that's the idea there, that these two meet at the compound or somewhere. It doesn't have to be the Hardy compound, but whatever they do, however they do it, I anticipate something really fun and exciting, and will add to the product for sure. And overall, I mean, it's funny how we have another exciting episode of Dynamite, even though it's not the exciting episode of Dynamite we were talking about on Wednesday. Like, we were expecting something wholly different for tomorrow or Wednesday night show, and now we're given a totally different card, but we're still like, yeah, this is actually really cool.
Definitely, and it is something really cool, and I'm honest to God excited for it, crowd or no crowd.
Yeah, and it's just because I've become a fan of Sammy G. I'm not a huge fan of Jimmy Havoc, but I've been a fan of his for a long enough time that I'm excited to see him get this opportunity too. Mm-hmm. And then the Matt and Jericho thing, like, so it's despite it not being the card that we were promised and being a whole different card, I'm still excited and very much interested in what's going on. And can't wait to see how we continue to build the Blood and Guts, and hopefully we get some type of answer as to when they plan to do that.
Yeah, that's the big thing because I'm all for the build, but I kind of want to know when the payoff is.
Yeah, because it's hard. If they're trying to wait to do it till they have a crowd, you have no idea when you're going to have a crowd. So you just need to make a decision and go for it.
Yeah, I totally agree there because at a certain point, the decision could get made for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So no telling what they're going to do. Nonetheless, it looks like tomorrow night, or I keep saying tomorrow night, but Wednesday night's episode of Dynamite looks great. But tomorrow night's episode of Dark looks great as well. AJ and I will definitely be tuned into that. Until then, though, AJ, is there anything we forgot to add?
Nothing I can think of, man.
All right, go ahead and plug your social media.
You can follow me on Twitter at BigMatchAJ, and you can follow me on Instagram at AJTheFitzy.
And as always, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at All Elite Podcast. We're on Instagram at All Elite Everything. And we're on Facebook at Facebook.com/AllElitePod. You can check me out on social media at All Elite Andy. We always appreciate you guys supporting the podcast, sharing the podcast, listening. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But until next time, thanks for tuning in.